Welcome, Dr. Epic here. And what we're going to talk about in this section is we're going to talk about movies, good and terrible. We're going to talk about jungle cities, sorcerer queens, and an animate landscape, and what exactly that means. We're going to talk about the Maya people of Central America. There is our outline right up above, and what we're going to do is take what we've learned about sociocultural anthropology and apply it in a case study to a single group of Native Americans, and in this case, the Maya. So who are the Maya? The Maya are one of the largest groups of all Native Americans. In fact, they might actually be the largest collection of Native American groups. They currently number somewhere between 6 and 9 million individuals. They are divided internally into roughly 22 distinct ethno-linguistic groups scattered across North America, but mostly concentrated in southern Mexico and northern Central America. The largest of these groups are the Yucatec, which inhabit the northern end of the Yucatan Peninsula. And there's about 2.4 million Yucatec speakers, but the way Mexico does its census makes them hard to count. But the vast majority of the Maya live in their old Native American homeland, which is the highlands of the modern nation of Guatemala. And there's roughly 5.4 million Maya in highland Guatemala, but they're divided into all these like little bitty groups. And the Maya have attracted, for reasons we're about to see, the Maya have attracted a lot of attention over the years, including attention from Hollywood. And there have been a number of movies made either featuring the Maya or using themes from the Maya. And some of these have been like incredibly good. If you ever have the chance to watch Ishkan Ul, I mean, it's an amazing film. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. It's just an amazing film. And it towers over other efforts to kind of capture Maya culture, including, Mel Gibson's absolutely ridiculous Apocalypto, which, I mean, it's gotten a really bad rap, but that's largely because it deserves it. But the entire movie is visually very stunning, and they are speaking Yucatec, although apparently they're speaking it quite badly. They are speaking Yucatec during the entire movie. Then there's an old forgotten gem from the 60s, Yul Brynner's Kings of the Sun, and an absolutely delightful children's movie called Book of Life, which is set in southern Mexico, but it uses almost entirely Maya concepts when they're going forward. And these movies are all quite delightful. Ishkanul is in Caquichel Maya. That's the language. So they have attracted tremendous amount of attention because their art is fantastic and stunning. Their culture is very deep and rich. And they are one of the most successful Native American groups of all the Native American groups. Politically, the Maya are centered on the nation state of Guatemala. But there's a large number of Maya that live in southern Mexico, and a lot of Maya can be found in Belize, northern Honduras, and into El Salvador. And this is kind of three very different environmental zones. In the south, in the highlands of Guatemala, it looks like that directly above me. You have this kind of rocky, volcanic, broken terrain with Central America's largest cities located in the cool highland regions of these mountains. As you move north from the rocky highlands, you bump into an area called the Southern Lowlands, capital S, capital L. And that's what the Southern Lowlands look like there on the left. The Southern Lowlands are dense tropical rainforest. It's the jungle. And this is very famous because this is where the Maya built their classic pre-Columbian civilization that we'll talk about in a tick. And if you look there on the upper left, if that's what happens if you keep traveling north, that's the northern Yucatan, where you have this kind of low scrub forest, which goes all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. So if you went from south to north, you would go from there to there, and then up into the corner. And the Maya settled all three areas deep in antiquity. But they're not limited to these areas. And poor conditions in Central America and poor conditions in southern Mexico have led to a large number of Maya, maybe even upwards of 1 million Maya, joining the streams of emigration northwards, settling in the United States. And if those numbers are to be believed, if there are 1 million Maya inside the United States, this actually makes them the largest Native American group inside the borders of the United States. Now, it hasn't been an even distribution. The Maya immigrants have largely concentrated in 2 areas in the United States, in and around Houston, where they have this like kind of very weird relationship with the grocery store chain Safeways. If you go into a Safeways around Houston, almost everybody working there, with the exception of the cashiers, is going to be Maya. And in southern and central Florida, where they work a lot in the produce fields. Their close ethnic affiliations and their close family loyalty and kin ties have given Maya immigrants a very distinct advantage over other immigrants from Latin America, including whether these guys are legal or not. They just have a real advantage. The Maya, fairly or not, are most famously known for their pre-Columbian classic civilization, which existed between about AD 300 and AD 900. And classic Maya civilization was never unified, but rather seemed to consist of about 40 or 50 independent city-states stretching from the mountainous south to the scrub forests of the north, but mostly concentrated in the jungle area in the center. The heavy tropical rainforests are where the classic Maya built these gigantic cities. And there's what one of the cities looks like today. That's the ruins of the city of Tikal. And right up above me is an artist's depiction of the living city of El Peru Huaca, where I have worked at for many years. And it remains something of a mystery why the classic Maya built these giant pre-Columbian cities in a delicate environment like the rainforest, which is very delicate and very unforgiving. But they did it. And they maintained a sustainable relationship with this delicate rainforest environment for centuries, despite some of these cities being 20, 30, 40, 50, 80,000 people. And they're just truly remarkable. And inside these cities, they produced absolutely stunning art, absolutely beautiful art. In terms of Native American art, I don't want to throw any shade on any other Native American groups, but it's been argued that the Maya represent the apogee of Native American art. Colorful, rich, naturalistic figures. If you look at that parade of soldiers at the very top, all of those soldiers are different. All of them look like actual people. They're individually dressed. They're moving fluidly. They're not stiff and informal. If you look at the dancer there on this ceramic vessel on the lower left, he moves fluidly. His face is naturalistic. This fluidity of line and the individuality of the art has rendered Maya art as something just truly spectacular and one of the great treasures of America. The Maya are most famously known for their hieroglyphic script. The Maya are one of the only Native American peoples that produced a fully written language where they could express any thought, any utterance could be written down. And on the left is what some of their monuments looked like. These huge monumental histories covered with events of the day. And right up above me is what the writing looks like if you actually get into it, and what the writing looks like in a basic illustrated format. And they would raise these engraved stela with all of these monumental histories on them because, and we'll get into this in just a tick, the Maya have a very unique sense of history. They have a very unique sense of time. They believe that time is circular and eternal, and that the past is the future, and the future is the past, and all of which may be experienced in the present. So one of the reasons that they wrote down these huge public histories was to be able to predict what happened in the future. If something bad happened on a certain day, their children and grandchildren would know to watch out for that day because bad things might happen. For many years, the Maya hieroglyphs could not be deciphered. And it was only in the late 1970s and into the 1980s, and then wrapping up in the 1990s, that epigraphers and art historians and anthropologists were able to finally break the Maya code. It was the recognition that the Maya languages were not alphabetic. They didn't represent ideograms, but they were in fact syllabic. The Mayan languages resembled, Chinese or Japanese more than they resembled any European language, with each of these symbols representing a combination of consonant and vowel, and thus you could produce any word you wanted. You could have a K and an A, which is a fish head, that's ka, and you double that, you have ka, and then you attach that to a WA sound, cacao, and you have cacao, chocolate. And if you're interested in reading a pretty good book on how these scholars managed to crack this code, there's Michael Coe's great book right up above me, where he details how they cracked the Maya code and where they did it mostly in Texas. And from that decipherment, we've been able to look at these monumental histories and read the ancient histories of the Maya. And each of these different cities produced different monuments of monumental history, where they didn't just write about events, but they would depict the event as well. And these are three of the very famous ones from the city of Yaxchilan. They're lintels 25, 24, and 26, and those are in chronological order. And what these do, these monumental histories, I want to show you the story that they tell. The monumental histories here, these three panels, these three lintels, show the relationship between a king and his queen, between the king of the city-state, the king of Yaxchilan. It's Amnaj Balam. That stands for shield jaguar. And he's the male figure in these scenes. And he is consulting his wife, the great sorceress queen, Lady Kabel Shok, whose name roughly translates as to hand-like shark or shark hand. And we know the sequence of these monuments because they have dates on them. And the first one is over there on the left. And in this image, the sorcerer queen, Lady Kabel Shok, kneels, and she is burning a bowl of bloody paper. And from this bowl of bloody paper emerges this vision serpent. And the vision serpent snakes along the outer side of the panel, and then it opens its mouth. And then a war god, or the representation of her grandfather, it depends which interpretation you read, emerges from the mouth of the vision serpent, and he is armed for battle with a spear and a shield. And what she is doing is she is summoning the spirit of her grandfather in order to ask him for advice. And this advice is what she's going to give to her husband, the king himself. And we see another one of these rituals, a ritual of sorcery in which the king is a participant, but only a passive one. Lintel 24 in the center, the kneeling figure is Lady Kabel Shok. She is kneeling and her face is covered with blood because she is pulling a thorny rope through a perforation in her tongue. She has pulled her tongue out, taken a knife, and sliced through her own tongue, and then is pulling thorns and ropes through that tongue to cover her face with blood, so that the blood flows down the rope into the bowl of paper that is at her knees. It's right there. And then she's going to burn this paper as an offering, probably to summon another vision serpent. The king himself oversees this ritual, but again, the king is the passive figure in this art, and he is holding a burning torch over her so she can see what she is doing. She is again the sorcerer. She is going to summon a spirit and ask the spirit for advice or help in battle or assistance with the reins or knowledge about what their enemies are doing. Because Yaxchilan is surrounded by enemies, and Amnaj Balam is not this peaceful scholar king. The other monuments of Yaxchilan show him going out, making war, taking captives, and sacrificing those captives. The final panel from Yaxchilan is right up above my yellow box, and in this one we have the king and the queen standing as equals. But again, it is the king who is the more passive of the two. The queen stands in front of him, and she is handing him a helmet that resembles with a jaguar mask. And the king himself, Itzabnaj Balam, is dressed in quilted armor as he rides out to make war. And in these images, we have these sorcerer queens, we have warrior kings, and this is what is so attractive about ancient Maya cultures. We have this fantastic history. And it's going to hint as to something else, this other theme I'm going to hit on over and over and over. The Maya are a very patriarchal society, but they have this tradition of really strong women. And you can see in this artwork, this was public artwork. I mean, it was on the top of these doorways. The queen is every much a ruler as her husband. Every bit is powerful. He might be a warrior, but she is the sorcerer who can conjure vision serpents. Now, classic Maya civilization collapses somewhere between 800 and 1000 AD. That's why most people tend to peg it around AD 900. And no one really knows why classic Maya civilization collapsed. It is a heavily debated, it's a very controversial issue, but what we do know is starting in the 700s and into the 800s, we have increasing instances of war, increasing instances of fortified pyramids, of fortified cities, of battles, wars, and massacres. And the consensus is kind of orbiting two different schools right now as to what caused the classic Maya collapse. It either is, my favorite, unrestricted warfare, which upset that very careful balance between the Maya cities and their delicate rainforest environment. The second school argues it was a series of massive droughts, and they cite, some data from caves and from lake sediments that argue that there was this big drought in the years 800, and this upset Maya civilization. And it was in fact the drought that produced all of this warfare and fighting. As is who's correct, I mean, nobody really knows, but I don't know, it'll develop with time. And hopefully within the next decade or so, we will have a much firmer understanding of how classic Maya civilization unraveled in the jungles of Guatemala. Maya civilization collapses, but that's not it for the Maya people, because the Maya people are very resilient. They've had to endure more than just the collapse of their great civilization around AD 900. They also had to endure a very brutal Spanish conquest in the 16th century and into the 17th century, where armies launched from Mexico overwhelmed and destroyed the old Maya kingdoms in the south, first in the south, then in the north. And it took almost 200 years for the Spanish armies to penetrate into the jungle interior to snuff out the last of the Maya kingdoms in 1696. And then they had a long colonial history as part of the Spanish Empire. But it wasn't over yet, because after World War II, the Maya end up being the terrible victims of the longest and probably the bloodiest civil war in Central American history. This 36-year-long war, 1954 to 1996. You can see a photograph of it right there, when the government and communist guerrillas battled across Guatemala in this brutal, ugly civil war, which often ventured into the worst kinds of genocide. There's whole generals in Guatemala that can't leave the country because they'll be indicted for war crimes. And somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 Maya were killed during the horrible civil war. But the Maya are nothing if resilient. The Maya survived the collapse of classic civilization. They survived conquest by the Spanish. They survived genocidal civil wars in the 20th century. The Maya are still here. And this contradicts what you often tend to read, which is that the Maya are often portrayed as having vanished after the collapse of classic civilization. And in some New Age texts, they kind of like translated into energy. No. Just like the Roman Empire collapsed, but we still have Italians, the Maya civilization collapsed, but the Maya are still here. There's a couple of them right there. She's on her smartphone, and he's enjoying a cool cerveza in the warm sun. they are with us today. While classic Maya civilization collapsed, the Maya themselves survived the collapse. And indeed, if numbers and prosperity are any guide, the 21st century looks really bright for the Maya. In fact, they are turning into the 21st century Native American success story. And here's a picture I took almost a decade ago. This is a modern Maya, traditional Maya women dressed in their traditional traje, their traditional clothing. And they're sitting in a tent in the center of Guatemala City, enjoying pizza, playing on their phones, and waiting for the big Easter parade. And even modernized Maya women tend to wear this traditional dress, this traje, and the huipil on special occasions, Semana Santa, weddings, or funerals. The Maya are still around. In fact, the Maya seem to be really prospering. And one of the measures of their 21st century prosperity is that the Maya have started to enter politics in a really major way. In 2019, there was a presidential election in Guatemala, and Guatemala has pretty much always elected, these very Latino, very strong men. But in 2019, you had a Maya woman who ran for the presidency. And there she is right up above me, Thelma Cabrera. She didn't win, but she captured, I think, more than 10% of the vote. This is a very good sign. The Maya are going to gain political strength over the next coming decades. And eventually, it is very likely that at one point in time, there will be a Maya president of Guatemala, and maybe even a Maya woman as president. Now, whether she can summon a vision serpent or not is another story. Maya religion today is highly syncretic. What does syncretic mean? Syncretic is when religions blend together. And Maya religion today is highly syncretic. It's a blend of Catholicism and pre-Columbian belief systems, and it's probably best exemplified by what I think is one of the most beautiful churches I've ever seen. The yellow church of San Andres Xecul. There it is right up above me. It's a Catholic church, but I mean, look at the colors on the front of that church. It's amazing. It's bright yellow. The vegetation is green. And what it shows is mountains festooned with vegetation, with saints living inside the mountains and cavorting with bats, cavorting with spirits, cavorting with jaguars of the forest. And indeed, if you look at the very top of the church, there are a pair of jaguars from the forest holding the foundation of the cross itself at the top of the church. And this church is just a wonderful blend of traditional Catholicism and traditional pre-Columbian Maya systems folding together. We'll return to that. The Maya, at least many of them anyway, believe in an accessible animistic world. An animistic world is one where powerful spirits and souls are in everything and in everywhere. An animistic landscape is one where mountains, rivers, and even businesses are inhabited by animate souls. And one seeks to maintain an amiable and beneficial relationship with the souls that inhabit the world around you. You are surrounded by spirits at all points in time. If you want your house to treat you well and to treat your family nicely, you should feed the soul of the house every now and again. Bury a chicken under one of the cornerstones, pour out a little liquor on the foundation. And that keeps the soul of the house amiable to you and your family. And these spirits, especially the really powerful spirits, they can help in aid, they can lend assistance, they can protect you from violence, they can heal you when you're sick, they can assist with prophecy, and they can even help you in terms of money and love. But you have to engage with these powerful spirits, the spirits of the mountain, the spirits of the sky, the spirits of the river. They're all Catholic saints now, but many Maya still believe in them. And these are all themes we'll develop when we move into our next section, and I will see you there.